Ladies and gentlemen, we have emergency exits on either side of the boat, top deck and lower level. In the unlikely event of an emergency, uniformed crew members will help and assist in the downing of PFDs or personal flotation devices. You are more than welcome to get up and move around the boat. Watch your step at all times. Do use caution on the staircases. We ask of everyone to not stand on the benches or chairs. Once again, please do not stand on the chairs or benches. We just don't want you to fall, and we don't want anybody to fall overboard. We ask everyone to refrain from smoking, and if you have any trash or garbage, please use our trash cans. Do not throw anything on the deck, and please do not throw anything overboard. Try to keep the boat and the water as clean as possible. We have washrooms down below inside the cabin, as well as a full-service bar. Keep in mind that if you visit the indoor portion of the vessel to use the restroom or visit the bar, you are required to wear your face mask. So if you visit down below, please make sure you are wearing your face mask indoors.
You see a flag waving in the Chicago flag. You might have seen it all around our city. Right, those 2 blue stripes, 3 white stripes, and 4 red stars. The blue is to represent our waterways, the river, and the lake. The 3 white stripes would be the north side, south side, and west side. Now we really wave this flag everywhere, right? You've probably seen it on t-shirts, hats, bars. People have this tattooed, right, on their arms. You might be able to find someone on the boat with a Chicago flag tattoo. But those 4 red stars, I'll start with the 1. Because we're right at the site, roughly where Fort Dearborn stood. So if you look at this, we gotta get there to get through. All right. Actually, I do want to mention. So the Michigan Avenue Bridge is ahead of us, right? Renamed the DuSable Bridge, which I will talk about Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable. But just so you guys get a perspective, the Michigan Avenue used to be the easternmost point to our city. The Chicago only came as far as Michigan Avenue. Technically, right here is where the river would have met the lake. So after years, on different projects of development, landfill, after that Great Chicago Fire, we had a lot of rubble and ruin, pushed out our shoreline, filled up the lake, and there's other landfill as well on the north side, which I'll explain once we get out on the water. And basically, to the left and to the right, you are now, as of now, looking at artificial landfill and not natural landmass from the city if you were here 200 years ago. Right now, Michigan Avenue Bridge, renamed DuSable Bridge. I mentioned Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable, our first non-native permanent settler here at what was once the mouth of the river. Right, he had his homestead or his estate roughly where you see that Apple store. A man of Haitian descent. He spoke French, English, and the local Native American language here. He married a Potawatomi woman. So you can imagine how successful your trade would be if this was the case for you. But as we pass these blocks, after about 10 years or so, began to crack and crumble. They had to take it all off and reclad the building floor by floor in North Carolina granite, which is why they say, you guys from North Carolina? Oh, nice. I've never been down there. Well, anyway, that's why they say you certainly cannot take marble for granted. Right? It's terrible. It's a terrible joke. Okay, on the right side here, the Aqua Building coming up with the wavy balconies by Jeannie Gang. Here we go on the right, 2009. She's a local architect, kind of the talk of the town. There's a couple reasons for those balconies. Number 1, her aesthetic. She's inspired by the lithographs on the shores of the Great Lakes. Number 2, they are extensions of the floor plates. They do help break up the strength of that wind. Number 3, they help for the birds not to fly into the building. And last but not least, Jeannie Gang talks about how it can be isolating to live in high rises such as these, right? A little harder to meet your neighbors. So no balcony is the same. You can walk outside your balcony and wave hello to your neighbor above or below, or to the left or to the right. Now the Aqua and the lake. Our newest neighbor at the park, just next to us on the right side, you might have already caught a peek, right? That's 6 shades of blue glass, curvy profile, 3-decker, gorgeous skinny tower. The St. Regis Chicago, the 3rd tallest building in the city of Chicago now, by Jeannie Gang, that architect who did the Aqua. It kicked Aeon down to number 4. This is also the tallest building in the world, designed by a woman or lead female architect. Right? Now, if you look at the tallest tower, there's a couple floors that are left completely open, right? They're empty. This is on purpose, but not part of the original design. The building did not pass its wind shearing exam. The wind gets very strong at the top of these skyscrapers, right? They're all meant to sway a couple inches whichever way. But you don't want to make the millionaires too nauseous in their penthouses. They did have to blow out those floors, right, as below-pool floors, to mitigate the strength of that wind that comes right through, with the exception of the core of the building and the elevators, of course. All right, let's see. We're going to come out to our lake soon, and I do have a bit of history of our city and of our river. I'll sit down for it. Chicago was a very industrial town. But it's no surprise that a giant city ended up in this spot, right? At a very geographically strategic point in this country to become a center of commerce. Right, the railroads converging here. If they're going east to west, west to east, this is no flyover state. You're coming to Chicago. Now, we become the center of the catalogs, right? Montgomery Ward, Monkey Ward. We have Sears and Roebuck as well. We become the center of the lumber industry, the meatpacking industry. We had the world's largest slaughterhouse on the south side. Questionable meat products around the nation, right? In the 1800s, we're dumping our industrial waste and our personal sewage into the Chicago River. Right, like many bodies of water, it flowed into the larger adjacent body of water, which would be Lake Michigan, right? A freshwater gem of the world. They all sue the city of Chicago because they thought that we would empty the lake. No, it would take a millennia to empty a lake of this stature, but the lawsuit lasted 28 years, went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the solution to that lawsuit, the Chicago Harbor Lock. You are looking, we're in the lock right now actually, we just came in the lock. Okay, so in order to get from this river to that lake to this river, you have to come through this lock. Again, it's a more of a controlled flow, a start and stop, rather than a constant drainage. So really to mitigate that flow of the lake water getting down all the way to the Gulf takes about 3 weeks. Let's see, so the lake is about 4 or 5 feet higher than the river. So if you guys look on the left lock wall, you can see the water line where the concrete color changes. That's how high up we're gonna go. What they're gonna do is, first of all, the lock has been open since 1938, right? It's run by the Army Corps of Engineers. This is their control center on our west side. You know, they built it, they operate it. Their flag is behind us, the red flag with the white castle on it, and it operates 24/7. This is a federal waterway where you can literally pull up in this lock, doesn't matter what time of day, and you just radio in, they'll open it for you. Now there is a hierarchy to the lock. Government boats are first, so you know, if you're the fire department, the boats behind us, your U.S. Coast Guard, Water Reclamation District, CPD, your first priority getting through the lock. Second priority would be commercial vessels like ourselves, and like our little lock buddy behind the gates that go near the air horn, and we will be on our merry way through. But I want you guys to enjoy the lock. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Para poder abrir esta puerta porque el agua ya no va a salir. ¿Ves por qué yo no fui a la escuela? No alcanza a cantar todo lo que dice. Mira, ya ves que aquello está cerrando, sí. Entonces mira, este barco también va a subir.
might ask, it was never built. There was an old city plan that called for 2 piers, one north of the river, which would be on our left side, and one south of the river that never came to be. And these were to alleviate the boat traffic or the shipping traffic from the lakefront and take it to the pier. Why? It's the same plan that wants our lake to be, our lakefront, to be open, free, and clear to the public, right? For recreational, for parkland. They come to other waterfront cities. They're going to build right on the waterfront in Chicago with 28 miles of public beaches, marinas, bicycle trails, walking trails, the public museum campus, and parks as well. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, you guys have a lot of different uses since then on the west side. In 1918, in Holiday River, down to Dodgers. After World War I, it was named Navy Pier in honor of the Navy that served in the First World War. And during World War II, it was a naval air training base. So we did have aircraft carriers out in the lake. And the pilots training, practicing their landing. So there are a few planes in the bottom of that lake, and all those from the tents. And there's a lot more logical to practice and to train here in the center of the country as opposed to the coast right at the front of the south. So great utilization Navy Pier. One of the older, longest, at the time, and most successful pilots that trained at Navy Pier was President George H.W. Bush, who was serving that Second World War. After that, it became a campus, a college campus for the University of Illinois Chicago, UIC. Really moved their campus to the southwest side, or south side over by Newtown, Little Italy. Imagine having a campus here in the future, coming to class, a few people who are working, get out at it. But first of all, the 2 original structures remaining left up there are the front here, the total pier, everything else in between has undergone many a renovation. Of course, now it's a commercial site. We have our beer garden, which is a new archway. Above it is kind of a red stuff. This would be the world's largest rooftop bar and then the offshore and everything else called offshore. The Stable Hotel, a beautiful view from everything. A year or 2 old, so you can get Children Beach now, we have the Shakespeare Theater, and our third Ferris wheel now, here, this is about 6 years old, by temperature controlled, the lights up, great. And my own personal favorite part of the fair, and actually that was a glass house behind the Ferris wheel. There's a conservatory, there's tropical plants, great lighting right for photography, looking for earth tones, and good lighting. I'll go to the conservatory right behind the Ferris wheel, or if you're getting a lot of steps in on the lakefront or on the pier, might be the only free spot on the pier besides like the benches around, other than you can sit and relax. So I would recommend doing that and checking it out. But I want to direct your attention to the right side of the boat. In the lake, you see something that looks like a circus tent. This is one of our 3 water cribs. So Chicago has 3 functioning water cribs. One is a mile out from the shore, the other 3 miles out from the shore, and then 5 miles out from the shore. And what they do is they pump water down a series of pipes on the floor of the lake into what you see on our left side. There's kind of trees lining this facility, the Jardine Filtration Center, where we filter our water. So you can see 2 floors of it now, but it's actually a 7-floor facility, 5 of them gone underground. Now, filters about 1 billion gallons of water in a week, and of course, Chicago sells that drinking water to the surrounding municipalities and the suburbs, right? The Chicagoland area, over 100 of these suburbs. Now, the trees that are lining this park, Milton Lee Olive Park, kind of a low-key park here in Chicago. I've actually never been there myself, but I imagine it'd be a beautiful place to picnic here if you're under one of these trees. Now, named for Milton Lee Olive, the first African-American gentleman to earn the Congressional Medal of Honor due to his sacrifice in Vietnam. So we do honor Milton Lee Olive with our poet. Okay? Well, let's see. You guys want to get your bearings straight a little bit. You're looking all the way to the north. You're no longer looking at Chicago, you're looking at Evanston, the very north tip of our view here. Right, of course, home of Northwestern University. And then if you came down the lakefront, right, you go down Sheridan Road. And by the way, if you rented a car at all, if you have a car that to drive, for someone to drive you, I would, of the neighborhood. It's getting lost in the clouds now. The John Hancock Center right now goes by its address, 875 North Michigan Avenue. You might be able to make out those X's on the side of the building, those X brace structures, which are very, defining characteristic of that tower. That's how you know it's the John Hancock Center, to have the X's. Those are the X-brace structures of Foster Convent to open up the floor plan. So in order to have a more open floor plan, you want less support to the side of the building. He allocates that weight to the outside frame. That's where you get those X's in. Let's see what else. We have the break wall. Dates back, I think, late 1800s, right, to protect our shoreline. People ask me if the water, the surface freezes, right, over the winter. Closer to the shore, yeah, there could be parts of the water that will freeze. I don't know as much to walk on it, like I don't think you can, but there's like pieces of ice, mostly within this break wall, but not on the other side of it, right? Let's see. That's returning. He's gonna go this way, south. Behind the Jardine Filtration Center, behind Navy Pier, basically the cluster of buildings that you're seeing here, right on the lakefront. This would be Streeterville, a very eastern neighborhood, right on the water. Now, George Streeter, an eclectic shipman who once crashed into a sandbank where his ship crashed on a sandbank. He couldn't recover his ship. He started to landfill the water around him. Ended up accumulating, he was kind of a crazy dude, right? He ended up accumulating 186 acres of landfill. Now, he claimed it to be his own. He had documents forged with the president's signature. This is my land, right? This is not associated with the city of Chicago. It's not associated with the United States of America. I forgot what it was called. He had like a name for it, like it was his own country, right? Now, of course, when George Streeter died, the city reclaimed that acreage, named it Streeterville in his memory. Again, just behind Navy Pier and the filtration centers, that kind of cluster where it's a lot of luxury condos and rentals now. But if you're in the Streeterville neighborhood, there is a restaurant, the Yoke, where they have a statue of George Streeter, right? But with that, I usually do take a break here for you guys to enjoy the fire. Where did I leave off? Oh. The city was built of wood. And we were also in the middle of the drought. In just 3 months, we saw only 1.5 inches of rain. So the firemen, about 165 for the entirety of the city, were already a little burnt down from putting out fires earlier in the week, right? That were popping up earlier that week. Now, why did the river act as a barrier for the fire? Well, the oil and the grease floating on parts of it was flammable. But most notably, the strong wind easily took it eastward and northward. Right now, there's not many surviving structures that you see from the fire today. Not many buildings that you see in Chicago older than 1871. If you are by the Water Tower Place, famously we have that water pump station that survived the Chicago fire. Now, a horrible tragedy for the city. 100,000 people left homeless, 17,000 structures burned to the ground, and 300 people died. There's that shot. The captains never take us this close to the ship. Now, we do commemorate that fire with the second star in our Chicago flag. And although it was a horrible tragedy, it was kind of a reset button for Chicago, because the city that you see before you today would not exist as it does today if it were not for that Chicago fire, right? We had this opportunity to build a second city, which is why we're called the second city. It's not because we're second to New York, as they might like you to believe, but it is because this is the second city of Chicago, built on the rubble and ruin of our old Chicago, and this time designed with very well-intentioned, very planned out city, right? We have our grid system, our L system, our open lakefront, our alleyways for our trash, our diagonal streets to get to different places of the city on easier, the boulevards for beautiful residential spaces and trees, very strict fire codes, of course, the reason for all those back porches in our neighborhoods. You got an entrance on either side of your home, although it is ironic all the porches are made of wood. But let's see, on the left side, or on the skyline here, I love this view of South Michigan Avenue, right? You have the older buildings of the late 19th, early 20th century, right? All the old hotels, and older like Adler and Sullivan. entertainment and showmanship, right? Exotic dances from the east that you normally wouldn't see here in the west, essentially belly dancing. Buffalo Bill, a little too lowbrow to be officially accepted into the program for the fair. He set up camp just next to the fair, took advantage of the tourists coming through. H.H. Holmes also famously took advantage of the tourists coming through. Now, how could I forget? Nikola Tesla's alternating current. Imagine coming in from a small town and seeing this city light up in electricity and inspired the Emerald City and the Wizard of Oz. It really was a cultural reset. Right? It brought tourism and income to the city, but most importantly, it put Chicago on the map as a city to be respected, right? A city that could pull off a fair of that grandeur, a city of culture and prestige that should be up there in the rankings with our neighbors to the east who might have looked down on us at the time, right? Maybe DC or Boston or New York. Right? Now, we do commemorate that fair with the 3rd star on our Chicago flag, the 4th being the Century of Progress Fair in 1933. So if you guys are ever in trivia, the 4 stars on the Chicago flag are 4 F's: Fort, Fire, Fair, and Fair, right? Fort Dearborn of 1803, Chicago Fire of 1871, World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, and the Century of Progress in 1933. Fort, Fire, Fair, and Fair. But let's see. I usually do better with my timing. Usually we're like out of here and we're going. But I do want to point out a little bit. First of all, there's the glass house. Remember I said the conservatory with all the tropical plants just behind our Navy, the Ferris wheel. Also the Ferris wheel, this is our 3rd Ferris wheel on the pier, the Centennial Wheel, right? We are nearing our journey here, so if anyone has to use the bathroom, I would probably do it sooner rather than later. Also, we can't take alcohol drinks off the boat. Oh wait, I think we are going to do the full bridge of the river. Let me see. Okay, on the right here, this white bridge you see jetting out of the bridge house, it goes through the bridge house. The flyover, if anyone is a cyclist or wants to rent a bike on the lakefront, this is a good time to do it. They just finished this flyover last year. I am personally grateful for it because previously the bikers and the pedestrians had to share a very skinny sidewalk crossing the Lakeshore Drive Bridge. They've really opened it up, right? Doubled the space here, and it makes very easy access to get from the south end to the north end of the trail. Actually, and if you're here over, they typically do it over Memorial Day, although with COVID they did it over Labor Day this year. Once a year they close down Lakeshore Drive and you can bike the drive, right? You can bike just on the Lakeshore Drive. It's really cool, actually. It's really fun too. Now on our right here we have Riverview 1 and Riverview 2 with the orange brick and the green accents, the trees in front of it. I have less architecture facts, more real estate. Riverview 2, the left building with the current and the 800,000 gallons of blue glacial water that comes in and churns it all together every time those lock gates open. I know what you're gonna say, Georgia. Don't you dye the river green. I don't personally do it, but on St. Patrick's Day, the Plumbers Union uses a vegetable base. It's actually an orange dye, it's a secret recipe, and it dyes this river a neon pale green. It's quite the sight to see, but not the reason for the color that you see before you today. If you look to the right, I don't want to miss it, because I know I got some New Yorkers on the boat. This building might look familiar to you, right? It looks like 30 Rockefeller Center or NBC Tower. Art Deco throwback by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. They wanted their Chicago offices to look like their New York headquarters, their own little piece of 30 Rock here. But coming up next, tower. Yeah, it's crazy. And he's now designing the next tallest building in the world, which will be 2.5 times this height. Will be in Saudi Arabia. Again, that's Adrian Smith, a Chicagoan. And I don't know why you want to build that tall, but I guess if there's a will, there's a way, I suppose, and the money to do it, right? We need that too. Now, neighbors to the Trump, we're still on the right side of the boat. This beautiful black tower. It is very simple. This modernism or internationalism style by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, right? That modernism is a simple black box. Glass and steel are the stars here. No unnecessary ornamentation. Mises' philosophy, less is more. Now, he went on to become one of the most influential architects of the 20th century. This is actually one of the last projects he designed. He taught at the Illinois Institute of Technology, was the director of the architecture department. He came from the Bauhaus School in Germany, where one of his students, Bertram Goldberg, designed Marina City to our right side, aptly nicknamed the Corn Cob Towers. These were the tallest residential buildings in the world when they went up in the early mid-60s. At that time, people were moving to the suburbs, so the city wanted to bring people back downtown. They equipped these buildings with a bowling alley, an ice skating rink, which is now the Smith & Wollensky Steakhouse, a movie theater, which is now the House of Blues, a supermarket, a bank, all of these amenities that you might want or need in order to be convinced to move to a high-rise downtown. The elevators are at the core of those cogs. Think of it as a stem with pedals. The apartments are pie-shaped. They're narrow when you walk in, wider as you walk through. Your balcony, the widest part of your unit. And for those who are wondering, there have been 2 cars that have fallen off the sides of those 19 Ford parking lots into the Chicago River. I love the reaction of both instances on purpose. One was for a movie, The Hunter, and the other was for an Allstate commercial, which I think is rather clever, right? Allstate is headquartered here in the Chicagoland area. You can YouTube that commercial. Now on our right side, you're looking at a 1914 building, the Reed Murdoch Center, a warehouse. Remember, if you were on this river over 100 years ago, it would look very different than it does today. You'd see ships loading and unloading cargo, manufacturing plants, right? It'd be bustling with industry. Reed Murdoch, this is asymmetrical. First of all, on the left side, there's one less bay of windows. Sorry to make it look back. Imagine what this building has seen go up in its day. Literally everything else that you see around it. Now, Chicago tries to be a green city, right? 300 North LaSalle, with the trees in front of it, is made of recycled steel. It has a green roof or a vegetation or a garden at the top, helps to drain the rainwater, let oxygen into the air. Also doesn't use traditional air conditioning and uses the river water to cool the building. It is for these reasons and lot more that 300 North LaSalle has a LEED Platinum rating. That is leadership in energy and environmental design. Of course, Platinum, the highest certification that you can achieve. Let's see, on our right we have a mammoth piece of limestone. Swampy marshland, imagine around this river, no skyscrapers. This would be your town center. It's a very logical place to put your town center. It is where the North Branch, the South Branch, and the main branch converge. Our first inn was here, our first tavern, public meetings, public debates. And back when they were trying to name this area, they noticed the Native American community referring to it as Chicago. What were they really referring to? The wild, smelly onions, leeks, and garlic growing on the banks of these waters. So I like to say, if you want to go to the Big Apple, you go to New York City. But if you're coming to Chicago, welcome to the smelly onion, ladies and gentlemen. Right? That's the literal translation for the name of our city. All right, I guess we're going to the South Branch on the right here. We have a building that looks like it was built upside down. How did they get the base of that building so skinny? But there's 54 stories stacked above it. 2017, your architects are blushing partners. They have something at the top called a mass damper system. About 160,000 gallons of water in 6 concrete silos will sway or slosh to the opposite direction that the wind is blowing in order to keep that building in equilibrium. Mass damper systems don't traditionally use water as their counterweight, but there are a few buildings here that do so. Or a couple buildings here, that's one of them. 100 North Riverside on our right, the Boeing International headquarters, built in 1990 for the Morton Salt Company. If you look where it says the Boeing store at the corner, and look up, count 5 pillars toward the boat. This section of the building is suspended from the top down. It's built over switch tracks, which take up a lot of space, right? You can see the vents or the screens here. Now, the switch tracks in the railroad, they had to get a little creative here. They didn't have enough room to lay down their caissons. So once we pass the bridge, if you look back and you look up, you will see those X-white steel trusses that are holding up the building, right, hanging it from that top down, kind of defying gravity there in that southwest corner. Now on our right, we have a 1929 Art Deco building, 2 North Riverside Plaza, initially the home of the Chicago Daily News. If you look on either side of the clock, you see carvings of people writing or etching things into stone to pay homage to our human history of reporting and recording. Now, if you wanted to build on the railroad tracks, and I'm not lying here, if you look at eye level, you see that train inside there. Is there a train in there? Yeah, I think there should be. The railroad companies has something called air rights construction. So they own the air above the tracks themselves. The railroad companies own the air above their tracks. So you have to buy the right to Merrill. That is your architecture firm, very well known, very well accomplished. Bruce Graham is your lead architect. He teams up with Fazler Khan, the same gentleman who do those X braces on the Hancock, is the structural engineer for the Sears. He's said to be the Einstein of structural engineering from Bangladesh. Now, it's actually 9 75 by 75 foot boxes or tubes, 9 individual towers bundled together into one, which is why it has that shape, right? They all top off at different heights. If you looked at it from an aerial view, it'd be a 3 by 3. Only 2 of those towers or boxes reach the highest height of the building. The way the story goes, Bruce Graham and Fazler Khan were out to lunch. One of them took out a pack of cigarettes. And when you lift a cigarette out of the box, it can get higher out of said box if it is packaged tightly with the cigarettes underneath it. As opposed if you were trying to stack them up one by one, they would just fall over, right? So 12. The oldest building we've seen today, actually. The train has been around here. The only point I want to make about that building is there used to be a building there called the Wigwam where the Republican National Convention was held and they nominated Abraham Lincoln. First of all, 225 West Wacker Drive. When you look up, there's a little bridge at the top. What looks like bridge houses on either side pays homage to our 38 movable or workable bridges here again. 38 movable bridges, second in the world, only second to Amsterdam, which has over 100. The majority of our bridges are bascule trunnion bridges. Bascule in French means a distribution of weight or a